The good things about living in Birkenhead are you're close to lovely places to go for walks, especially if you've got dogs.
Birkenhead Park, on which Central Park in New York was eventually modelled.
If Birkenhead was an animal, a feral rabbit.
It's quite aggressive sometimes on a Saturday night, but not really very dangerous.
It's on the peninsula called the Wirral, so it has to be a Wirral squirrel.
Mark Steele's in town.
Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from Birkenhead by the River Mersey, although its full title is Birkenhead, not sodding Liverpool, all right? In fact, the coat of arms in Birkenhead bears the Latin inscription, Nasquam est melia quam, never heard of Liverpool, isn't it near Southport? Transitus equara. You get the idea of the attitude here from an exchange that I saw on TripAdvisor on the internet. A student said that they were coming to a college in Birkenhead and asked if they should stay here or in Liverpool. And the reply from a Birkenhead person was, "The views from Birkenhead are brilliant, looking over to Liverpool. And it's a heck of a laugh when you consider those living in Liverpool are paying a lot more for their place and they only get to look at Birkenhead." One way of enjoying a spectacular view, if you come across from Liverpool, is on the underground train called the Wirral line. Now, that has been immaculately preserved, hasn't it? The trains are made of sheets of metal stuck together with blue tack. And they make this ka-dunk-chi-king-ka-chunk-ka-dink-ka-chunk as you think, I've got on the ghost train by mistake. And a nice touch on the Wirral line that's very local is that each station has a subtly different aroma of urine. For example, you might get off at Hamilton Square and think, full-bodied, rich, fruity on the palate. When I arrived at Hamilton Square on the Wirral line, to start with, I had to scamper up the train to get off because most of the doors were shut and broken. And I was trying to find the exit from the station, and then someone in a uniform come over and said, "Hey, mate, you'll have to take the lift, the stairs are busted." Now, that is when you know a place is hard. Anyone can bust a lift. Here we bust the stairs. And yet, the image of Birkenhead you get from some people in Liverpool is that this side of the water is posh. Is that right? Another clue as to how posh it is in the centre of Birkenhead is the sort of comments made about it on Twitter. There's this one. "If smacking kids is illegal, for mass arrests, police should station themselves between aisles 1 to 13 at Asda in Birkenhead." That's from Chris Burton, and someone called Steve Porter wrote, "Recreate the beauty of Birkenhead's Christmas lights by buying one 40-watt bulb and painting half of it blue." There is one issue about the river that seems to crop up a lot. Now, there was a man called Bob who's lived here 60 years, and he wrote some notes for me about the local history. And in capitals, he put, "Highway robbery is still practised in Birkenhead. We have to pay for the tunnels to Liverpool." And I should add that in brackets, he actually writes, "The audience will cheer at that." Now, part of the reason may be that the tunnel was opened in 1934 with a promise that the tolls would last a maximum of 20 years. And now, each year, instead of abolishing the tolls as promised, they actually put them up more. The Mersey Tunnel company seems quite pleased with itself despite this, and on its website it advertises tours of the tunnel. "This unique experience is one you won't forget. Here are some comments from people who have been on the tour. After going on the tour, I now understand that the tunnel toll is value for money." Really? Someone came out of the tunnel and said that. Who's running the Mersey Tunnel tours? Is it the President of North Korea? But there's another one. "It was the best thing I have ever seen." Fantastic. The ventilation system is wonderful. A real eye-opener. The best thing I have ever seen. What sort of a life have you had? No, I've been to the Grand Canyon, I've been at the birth of my own kids. They weren't just fantastic as the Mersey Tunnel ventilation shaft. So what do you all think about the tunnel there? This is an outrage, is it, about the tunnel tolls? Yeah. Someone did tell me I wanted to do this, but I haven't managed it. Coming back on the night bus through the tunnel, is that a game, is it? Hey, go on, do that, Attenborough, never mind gorillas. There is an upmarket product that does come from here. Oscar-winning actress turned politician, Glenda Jackson, who was born in Birkenhead, went to West Kirby Grammar School, and then worked for 2 years in Boots on the laxatives and bilious attacks counter. So the first question here is why Boots in Birkenhead needs a special counter for laxatives and bilious attacks. But also, I just have this image of Glenda at 17 in Boots saying to customers, "Ah, madam, constipation, the wretched curse. Yet behold this bottle so innocent in its form, and yet the potion contained within can loosen but 1,000 constrictions and bring forth blessed relief to those who suffer so heartily upon the pan that they may no more grunt." That'll be 2 and 4pence, please, pet. To be honest, I think once you've been to Birkenhead town centre, the only rational response to the suggestion that it's posh in Birkenhead is, "Are you mental?" I went out for a night in the central bit known as Charing Cross, starting in a place called the Recession Bar. And I swear this is true. A skinny lad in a hood came in carrying a holdall, put it on the pool table, took out a bundle of packets of cheese and went, "All right, lads, I've got Cathedral City here, £2.50 a pack. This is £4 an Asda. Don't be shy." I was tempted to say, cheese, how timely. Do you have any Roquefort to go with my port? But the Recession Bar is like Claridge's compared to the place over the road called Moods. It is magnificent. I honestly loved it. There was just a bare floor, a thin sort of bar, a karaoke machine with blokes all the time going, "Start spreading the news! I'm leaving today!" While a woman of about 60 in a very short skirt danced on a table, honestly. And a huge bloke rode up and down this thin bar on a mobility scooter. I swear this is all honestly true. And then Come On Eileen came on. So the bloke from the mobility scooter got out and stripped off entirely naked and started dancing. And I know I'm in no position to judge physically, but I don't think anyone was likely to look at his physique and go, "Isn't that Tom Daley, the diving champion?" Posh? In what world is it posh? What life are you living if you go, "Ooh, we're not good enough for you, are we? You're off to swan about in Moods, Your Majesty." Here's another controversial issue. The Wirral that Birkenhead is part of is a peninsula, which means a strip of land surrounded on 3 sides, apparently. But Wirral is also the name of the area. So a big debate that seems to cause all sorts of conflict over the centuries is Birkenhead in Wirral or in the Wirral? What do we reckon? Wirral. The Wirral. Oh, quite divided on this. I thought you were going to go for Wirral, not the Wirral. There's no article. There's no article. someone we won't be seeing in moods. The origins of Birkenhead are that it was established by monks around 1158 who began a ferry service rowing people across the Mersey from where the shipyard is now. Now, the monks promised faithfully that the service would definitely be free by 1178. I've no idea if they kept it. In 1810, the population of Birkenhead was still only 300, but the big change came in the 1820s when the Liverpool side of the river was packed with docks and shipping, so the son of a rope maker, John Laird, bought land on this side to set up a shipyard. Now, the rivalry, it seems, started quite early on because in the first bits of building in the town hall was built just up there near to Hamilton Square at the highest point of land so that it could be seen from Liverpool as a way of to Liverpool. And maybe that's how Birkenhead got built, through rivalry, because Liverpool responded with the Liver building, you hit back with Hamilton Square, they built a pier head, you replied with the Argos in the Pyramid Shopping Centre. And that's how the town was built. But one of the proudest achievements, and now this is something just about everyone here has mentioned, one of the proudest achievements of the new town was the park. Partly because it was the first one in Britain to be publicly funded. Now, the park was designed, in part at least, anyway, by Joseph Paxton, who then went on to design the Crystal Palace. And the park was on 2 levels with a huge arch for an entrance. It had curvy paths with the idea that this nurtured curiosity because nobody could be certain what was round the corner. And it's still true today, really, isn't it? Go round a bend and you don't know what's good. Might be a peacock, might be a junkie. You don't know. There was a resident gardener, there was cricket pitches, curling, and it was the start of a national parks movement. And this is in most of the literature written here, that Central Park in New York was based on the park in Birkenhead. And my first instinct there is, of course it was. Similarly, the New York subway was based on the Wirral line. And visitors to the Empire State Building generally say, well, it's quite a nice view, I suppose, but it's not as impressive as the ventilation shaft in the Mersey Tunnel. At the centre of Birkenhead throughout all of this was the Camel Laird shipyard that employed tens of thousands, many of them coming from Ireland during the potato famine, and they built hundreds of ships. One of the most famous ships built there was the Ark Royal, of course, pride of the Navy, and you get a sense of the camaraderie of the workforce from an account from a chap called Joe Edwards, who worked on the ship. He said, as there was a labour shortage, they brought people in from outside the area, places like Wigan. They were useless. Everything they made, when we went to test it, it blew up. Bloody comedians they were. Sounds like we'd have won the war 3 years earlier if it wasn't for idiots from Wigan. Now, there was a time when Camel Laird was part of international history in the American Civil War, when the southern slave-owning states broke away from the anti-slavery states, and the Confederate Navy in the south was short of ships. So they sent a man to Birkenhead to get some built, and the British government was supposed to be neutral. So the shipyard built the ship secretly. Now, you could argue that John Laird, owner of the shipyard, didn't really know the ship would be used for the Civil War, though there was a clue in that the name of the ship was the Alabama. And according to records, when it was commissioned into the Navy, the stirring anthem Dixie was played in celebration. Birkenhead! You scoundrels! You could at least have the decency to be embarrassed, not go, all right, mate, give Mr. Lincoln a smack in the head from me. Sounds like if you could have arranged it, you'd have got Bernard Manning to entertain the crew. There's a brilliant museum with a room full of stuff from the shipyard, including models of the Alabama. So I'd like to introduce Colin, who gave us a delightful tour of the museum. Oh, that's all true, isn't it? All the stuff about the Civil War.
Yes, it's basically true. Though, I mean, I think on the Laird's books, it was actually called the Enrica. They didn't call it the Alabama until it was actually fitted out.
Oh, canny little arms traders.
Yeah.
But now, here's a thing that I honestly didn't know this until you said this to me at all. But the Shenandoah, is it, at the end of the Civil War?
That was a vessel that was taken over by the Confederate Navy and was a Confederate warship that functioned mostly in the Pacific. And if you're a captain of a ship sailing in the middle of the Pacific, you don't necessarily know what's happening on land. He didn't hear until several months after hostilities had finished on land that by that time he'd wiped out the American whaling fleet and carried on raiding.
Even though
things.
the war was over?
Even though the war was over, yes.
So hey, stop! The war's over! I'm not stopping worrying about it.
So when it was actually confirmed that the war on land was finished, he decided that he wasn't going to give up his ship to the American Navy, and he sailed from the middle of the Pacific to the Mersey to surrender to the Royal Navy. So he arrived in the Mersey on November the 5th, 1865, and surrendered to the Royal Navy just off Rock Ferry.
So the last act of the American Civil War took place in Birkenhead.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much, Colin. Thank you. It's divided. It's like everywhere. It's divided. So much so that life expectancy in the centre of town is 11 years less than in the suburbs 3 miles away. So whenever someone aged 60 goes to the doctor in the middle of Birkenhead, the doctor should go, "Quick, get to West Kirby now! Get a taxi. If you wait for a bus, it'll be too late. Go!" Birkenhead isn't just about shipbuilding, it's also the home of Tranmere Rovers. So that's brilliant that you're fans of Tranmere Rovers. I mean, because Tranmere fans must be the loyalist fans in Britain. A paddle over the river away, there are 2 hugely famous teams, and here you stick with Tranmere, maybe encouraged by the Not a Guidebook, Not a Guide to Wirral, that says, I quote, "Things to do in Birkenhead. Head to Prenton Park for 90 minutes of electrifying football." And you have marvellous chants at Tranmere. Don't be mistaken, don't be misled. We are not Scousers, we're from Birkenhead. Which must surely be the politest chant in British football. Grammatically correct and geographically educational too. Dixie Dean, the most famous player in England in the 30s, came from Birkenhead. Played for Everton mostly, played for Tranmere to start with. Obviously a hero here, not just because he was a brilliant player. In the 1930s, Dixie Dean annoyed Hitler by refusing to do a Nazi salute when playing in Germany, when most people that went there did it. So marvellous that someone told me, and this is word for word what they told me, one of my greatest memories is that when I was 7, Dixie Dean called me a puff. Tranmere is an area of Birkenhead that's had many, many complimentary things written about it. The Liverpool Journal once said, "There is not in Liverpool, and certainly not in Cheshire, a locality so melancholy, gritty and objectionable as Tranmere. It is a neighbourhood that a man would frequent if he were meditating suicide and wanted finally to make up his mind." But there's a charming history to Tranmere. There's the lovely St Paul's Church, built in 1854, and according to The Changing Face of Tranmere, my book there, the foundation stone was laid using a silver trowel above a bottle containing that day's newspaper and 2 shillings. So that's quite sweet, isn't it? And even better, a few days later, ruffians dug up the foundation stone and stole the 2 shillings. There's a pattern to the history, I think, here, which is anti-authority, but in a slightly quirky and unexpected way. Like one example, after the First World War, there were strikes all across Britain. But here, as well as the shipyards, the police went on strike. The police demanded the right for a union because of grievances over pay and general bullying. And other issues, such as, and this is from a book called The Police Strike in Birkenhead, they asked to stop wearing helmet chin straps in the summer since it gave them odd tan lines. That's a union, isn't it? But there was a rebellion here led by miners who wanted to fight in the First World War, but they weren't allowed to enlist as they were below the minimum height. And according to Wirral history, in Birkenhead recruiting office, one of the miners, rejected on account of his size, offered to fight any man there. And 6 men were eventually called upon to remove him. And this strategy of responding to clerks who say you're too small to fight by punching their lights out led to them being allowed to form their own entire regiment called the Bantam Army, all of which were under 5'3". And of course, when they got over there, it turned out their size was an advantage. They didn't have to dig trenches so deep. They could fool the Germans into thinking they were a long way away when in fact they were... In the 1900s, a tourist industry started up on this side of the water. There's a beach just a couple of miles away that I'm sure you all go to regularly. Do you go there regularly at New Brighton? Yeah. At one point, New Brighton was challenging Blackpool as the resort in the northwest. And the New Brighton Tower was bigger than the Blackpool Tower. In fact, it is said that a man from the Himalayas visited it, and as a result, Mount Everest is based on the New Brighton Tower. On Facebook as well, somebody asked people to complete the sentence, "You know when you're in Birkenhead, when?" And the answers were just brilliantly imaginative. Things like when you've been to the pyramids but never been to Egypt, and you've tried to reach the top of the spider web in the park. But slightly more disturbing was, you know when you've been in Birkenhead, when you laugh at people wearing formal clothes because everyone else is in pyjamas. There's another reply, you know when you're in Birkenhead when you don't bat an eyelid when a big butch man in a skirt with hairy legs walks past. Is that anyone in particular? Is it? Oh, there is one man who does it. Oh, I'm so relieved. I thought it was just the fashion. I thought, oh God, I knew Paul O'Grady was from here, and I thought a Lily Savage was a drag act. I didn't realise that's just how blokes dress to pop out for biscuits. Is he the one on a push bike? Yeah. All right. Do you all know him? Yeah. He's what?
His name's Mike.
Mike? Oh, we should have got him here. He's a fan of Dex's Midnight Runners, is he? I'm not surprised that there are blokes in hairy legs called Mike in skirts, because it's a sign of your identity here, I think, to be naughty schoolboys. That's why it makes sense that Birkenhead has produced the band Half Man, Half Biscuit. Because Liverpool bands can write lyrics like "Yesterday all my troubles seem so far away," but it takes a Birkenhead band to write "When I'm pining for a cigarette, I think of all the free ones that I'd get if I'd killed myself and came back as a beagle." But for full-on Birkenheadness, I don't think any pub can match the delights of Gallagher's. Which, a round of applause from the people from Gallagher's. Everyone here knows Gallagher's pub, do you? Yeah. Because this is a cosy traditional pub, except that one half of the main bar is a barber's. I don't mean there's a chair and some scissors. It's a fully functioning red seats going up and down, mirrors, cloaks wrapped round you. How's that from the back, sir? Where are you going on holiday this year, sir? Condom for the weekend, sir? Barbers. I say, if this was in Liverpool, I think everyone would go, "No, it's ideal, you see, pub and a barber's. You can get your hair half cut." I'm only joking. Hey, just joking, mate. So at this point, I am very pleased to introduce Mr. Gallagher, Frank.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
At any point, Frank, did anybody go, a pub and a barber's?
Oh, plenty of times, yeah. Plenty of times they've said that.
So can you have a pint while you're having your haircut?
If you want, yeah, but you might get a little bit of hair in it.
Yeah. You were telling me about when the football's on.
Yeah, when the match is on and I'm watching, especially if it's Everton or something like that, I'm sitting back and I've got one eye on the match and one eye when I'm shaving. And then when they score, as we do in this season, so, they look at me like to say, you're kidding.
Oh, you could probably walk round Birkenhead, see all the little nicks on people's necks and go, oh, that was when we went 1-up against Norwich. There's a regular that goes in there, they were all telling me. The most unlikely regular, a German called Rolf.
That's right, yeah. It's Dusseldorf where he comes from. Every home game for Tranmere he comes across and watches them.
Every home game?
Every home game.
And then he buys everyone a beer?
We just keep saying to him, stop buying drinks, Rolf, stop buying everyone a drink. And he goes, I'm a millionaire. So obviously everyone's latching onto the millionaire.
Once you've got that money, why wouldn't you fly 1,000 miles there and back every week to watch Tranmere? After going in a pub barbers. Of course, we'd all do it if we had the money. Thanks very much to Frank. Maybe you've got to do weird stuff here to grab a sense of identity, because over the water there's the famous place with its Beatles and its Luis Suarez and its Adelphi. And at least here you only built a ship for slavery, you didn't build the whole town out of it. So I will leave you, Birkenhead, with Daniel Defoe's account of his journey here that I think does encapsulate the true majesty of the town, and thank you very much. Having traversed the river, we sought refuge for our weary limbs and happened upon a park and sheltered under a resplendent elm tree. Indeed, a native of the town informed us that this was the world's first ever tree. The one that gave everyone else the idea of having trees. That evening I bore witness to many activities, such as folk dancing naked to Dex's Midnight Runners and having wigs powdered whilst drinking ale in a tavern. Why do you behave so? I asked, and at once they all replied in unison, the reason is simple, sir. We are not Scousers. We're from Birkenhead.
Mark Steele's In Town was written and performed by Mark Steele with additional material by Pete Sinclair. The producer was Ed Moorish.